Hello, this is Cryptolyze. I hope you are well. This Friday, 29, December 2023, we meet together for the last daily of this year. And yes, it goes by quickly. I'm back on a more or less coherent setup. But I had some little recording problems this morning, so we're still on something that's different. But we are going to start our daily life. We are going to come back to the news because a lot has happened. We are going to come back to the lessons because we are in a monthly closing, which is very important. We will deal with the annual closing on Monday once it has been carried out, and you will see that there are many things that are being put in place, and that starts all right now. If you want to train and really enjoy bull running, it's simple. There is perfect, complete, free training available. It's through an educational journey that teaches you everything about blockchain, crypto, investment, technical analysis, and trading. All this for free in comments and descriptions. You have exercises, multiple choice questions, modules, videos, guides, everything to support you in your progress. We start with FTX with a joke which could actually be a joke. We are really not far from it because FTX offers those who have still lost money on their platform to reimburse them, but only to height of the price. Assets at the time of the crash, when, because of FTX, the market collapsed. So that means that we're talking about a BTC at $16,800. We're talking about an Ether at $1,200, I think. That's it, $1,200. While on the other hand, all the assets have exploded in price, and so the general idea is to say, okay, well, we sell all the assets, we don't bother, we pocket the difference, we reimburse those to whom we must repay, and then we move forward with the rest of the cash that has been recovered. And so here I can tell you that things are going very, very badly, but certainly it will happen. In this way, it's as if a little bit Mongok sold his BTC and repaid at the amount no longer of the current BTC, but at the amount. BTC during the Mongok's era. It would also go down really badly, so it's still very, very complicated to accept that. And at the same time, we expected it a little in view of the American pressure which has recovered $24 billion in missed taxes. We continue in the news with ARK Invest, rather good news, which files the Sony form. So this perhaps does not speak to you. It did not speak to me either until I read this article, in which it is the last form to be able to validate the passage of the ETF. Finally, the validation of the ETF by the SEC. Please note that it is in big quotation marks. It could be that the regulator, therefore the SEC, during their discussion on December 21, said that it had to complete the Sony before December 29 if it wanted to be part of the first wave of acceptance in early January. So I say it could be because these are remarks which are reported from a conversation which was private on December 21. Good. To see whether or not we will have validation at the beginning of January. Namely that we could very well have refusal on ARK Invest and then validate the rest in March and resubmit ARK Invest afterwards. Afterwards, if we have a validation at the beginning of January, many people are potentially moving towards a notion of sell the news event, rather classic, in which we would have the validation of the ETF. Then after an automated sale, profit-taking, and we notably have CryptoQuant, which is a very well-known analysis firm that talks about this for several reasons. One, they are aiming for $32,000, so which is still relatively low. We will see it later on the graphs, and they are basing themselves on this graph. So this graph there, if we zoom in a little bit to see a little bit what it looks like, well, quite simply, it is based on the fact that those who actually bought BTC in the short term are in profit, and are in profit of 30, and that's systematically. When we have this typology with a consolidation, exactly what we are seeing, not an explosion as we know in this bull run phase here, or this real pre-bull run phase that we see here, we generally have sell-offs which arrive subsequently, in which we have profits which are relatively important. And that precisely for them it is entirely logical, because it is something which is carried by traditional finance, and that it is more than 60 cases when we have this pattern that is put in place. It remains only 60 once again, but you know that I'm still very much into buy the rumor, sell the news, because it is traditional finance, because we started around a very strong rumor, the acceleration of the rumor, finally the acceleration of the blow around the rumor of the validation of ETFs which had been given by big media, nevertheless as a reminder in which we saw extraordinary liquidations on sale and purchase. Next to it, we have Ethereum, which should outperform in 2024, And yes, we are talking about analysts at the moment because it's the end of the year. That's when we have a bit of everyone talking. And we have a big analyst who explains to us that normally Ethereum should outperform BTC on 2024-2025 because we have the yielding which will attract institutional investors, the fact of being able to make a profit and a return thanks to ethers, and that alongside this we have a reduction in the max supply of Ethereum thanks to the various EIPs that have been put in place and to the proof F take in which we have the proof F take which really allows us to have a very significant burning, a very strong reduction in inflation. So we have already analyzed this in detail when talking about Ethereum, but also there is the notion of proof F take with the somewhat green side in which institutional investors will certainly not go BTC straight away because there is an image which is not necessarily positive in terms of the environment, while the proof of stake has a reduction in consumption which is simply monumental. And therefore, for this analyst, he considers that we would have an Ethereum which would outperform BTC. That remains to be seen, especially if we look here at Ethereum BTC. We'll start with that. We see that, yes, we still have a small outperformance over this short 2-week period that we had, but which still remains very weak. We're not going to hide. It's been since October 23, so already for 2.5 months, where we find ourselves here in a kind of accumulation, in a very important support zone for precisely the Ethereum to BTC ratio. So what we should see is a really strong acceleration at the level of Ethereum TC. As a reminder, to be able to push, there are two possibilities. Either we have an outperformance of Ethereum, therefore Ethereum which outperforms Bitcoin, or we have Bitcoin which underperforms Ethereum implied, Bitcoin which spits, Ethereum which spits less, for example. So we are waiting for that to see a bullish acceleration. And what is interesting to see is that technically we have on a weekly basis here a very nice accumulation of wick-off, in which we have already had, in fact, liquidity taking here, but the reaction bullish is very weak, okay? So here we still have a signal to tell us that yes, Ethereum will outperform, but that we risk still remaining in this period of ranging during a certain time or even break and actually look for a slightly lower target to start rising again. So we will have to be careful. I think that Ethereum is not yet set up to be able to really start. We have a part of altcoin which has broken out. Yes, as we can see, we really have outperformance. My level of outperformance there is a lot of altcoin here. Here it is Metis, you see, who has completely made a stratospheric wick in the space of a week, 2 weeks. And we really have a lot of outperformance from altcoin, but this is not the case for Ethereum. Ethereum is behind, not draining liquidity yet. And this is what is interesting to see, is that we do not have a bull run loan on Ethereum. And I think that this is one of the first times that I have seen this typology of assets, transfer of liquidity within assets like Ethereum, which is number 2 of Bitcoin compared to what we have seen historically. So if you ever have a fractal related to that, don't hesitate to tell me in the comments, I'll look. You have in the description and comments the possibility of downloading my strategy guide on investment and trading in cryptocurrency, in which there are 30 pages to know everything about how to proceed, how to benefit from this bull run. And in addition, in description and comment, you also have the possibility of having access to our newsletter, which is available and which will be available every month. The links are in comments and descriptions. In terms of macroeconomics, we will close the month at a new ETF. I think we'll stop here. We have almost no news today. The market is very weak in terms of volume, so we are not going to move. But therefore, we will end the year 2023 with a new 88th, which we broke here on January 2022, which was really very important, in which we began precisely this bearish phase, all while we is afraid of inflation, and that we is still afraid of the onset of this recession. Although the ghost of this fear is gradually fading away, that does not prevent it from still being there. We must take it into consideration for the year 2024. Next to us we have US oil. We are just going to remove Shimoku because we see that we are still in a more or less bearish part. But for me, we are here in the establishment of a zone of lateralization. We will see it form, I think, in 2024, and here we have the bond rates. American at 10 years, we see that in fact we are closing very bearish after 2 periods, but it still remains quite weak. We would really have to break the 326 here to really have a signal of breathing in the American market. This is not the case, so we take a little step back. In terms of the dollar index, the same. I think we are rather in a phase of lateralization. Are we going to continue our fall little by little with a break here from the lowest to seek here our area in 92.94? This would imply an underperformance of the dollar on all currencies and mainly compared to the euro. It also implies that we would have American bonds which are less and less interesting, and therefore behind leaks of capital which could go towards other assets, other asset classes, and that could be interesting for risky assets in particular, and that will be followed quite quickly. At the BTC level, monthly closing this evening, we do not forget that we are on CME, which necessarily closes on Friday evening, so we will have the monthly closing/annual, a very, very important moment in which we have a small retracing of the candle, but that does not prevent us from having once again in the month of December a huge acceleration candle at the level of BTC, and we are waiting here in relation to this notion of validation of ETFs. Are we really in a monumental cash flow? Current 2024? Or are we going to see a sell the news part until we have the influx of liquidity current, 2024, or even perhaps a little later? That will be the big question that we will have to ask ourselves for the end of the year, 2023, and the beginning of the year 2024, because it will mean a lot of things for the entire market. Nevertheless, what is certain is that when we look at the upward acceleration that we have on the total 3, we cannot deny the fact that we have already had a big alt season for several weeks with the really acceleration of certain alts. It's not all the alts, it's a few alts which actually pass the baton to each other before systematically having a breath. And we have liquidity inflows arriving. So generally, when we move from BTC to an alt season, we know very well that at a given moment we will either return to BTC or we will have a total breathing of the market. And why we have a big alt season at the moment. We are not going to hide that it is because we are lateralizing. Then we had this acceleration at the beginning of December. We remain in a phase of lateralization, which is even very important because that we have a CME gap above, a CME gap below, so we are well supervised. When we zoom in, we see that we are in a form of range which is positioned here, or even more of a form of compression with the very important level of 44,500, which has held us for some time, which is holding us against the resistance. And then we have an oblique support, which is the support which had in fact held all this movement there before having the bullish break, which also gave us the first CME gap of this bullish acceleration. So there we still have a pattern which is very important, and I have already explained it to you since. For a relatively long time, around mid-December, we were heading towards a form of compression of this style, until the end of the year, and at that time we were going to have two possibilities. Either we were going to break upwards, consolidate and start again upwards, with here the validation of the ETFs and the liquidity hunt that is being put in place, or indeed a bearish breakout. But the bearish breakout for me will not happen simply, it will also be done with a bullish breakout. Let me explain. We're removing all that. For me, if we are forced to break bearish, we must fill the CME gap, and we must liquidate all the shorts that are positioned here, because there are still a lot of them. If we look at the hit map, we can see that we still have a very large pack above 44 who are positioned short. Same here on Kingfisher. We see them well above 43,000 and bananas up to potentially 44,500, which is really the resistance that we already have for a golly time. So there, what will play out for me? It will be a bullish break, taking liquidity from all this liquidity that was there. So we will recover all the shorts, then we will fail the rebound, make a rebound like that, and then break, retest the oblique, and then break. Let if ever we have this theme of sell the news, okay, with filling the CME gap. If we ever make a bullish breakout at the moment, I think we will leave the CME gap for later. So that implies that we will do, break, retest, and then start again, okay. So here we will just have to be careful because we will simply have a set of traps that will be put in place to be able to limit the number of people who will accompany either the fall or the rise, okay? So both scenarios, I can tell you that we are going to be manipulated up and down across the board, that's for sure. And we can see it clearly, if only at the level of the different news that is arriving, which arrived in December. We see that we are heading towards generalized manipulation on the price of BTC and on the arrival of ETFs. In terms of order flow, we still have a lot of things being put in place. We have open interest here, which is growing little by little. What is interesting is that we see the funding rate being maintained, although we are not able to make any further progress. As a reminder, since already HOP here December 25 Christmas, we have funding which is increasing really sharply, but which cannot break the level above 0.56. So for me does not yet have an impulse also in terms of the funding rate, something that I would like to see to really validate a scenario which will be much longer. This is not the case, so we will monitor For me, we are in a lateralization phase, which corresponds to what we are experiencing, a compression phase. At the course level, at the level of the long-short ratio, at the level of the top traders, we see that we have a hold, or even a small decline. What is interesting to see is when we look at the entire movement in relation to the price that we are currently seeing, we still see that we are rather in a downward trend, so we have rather a form of profit-taking. A little bit like ARK Invest, where you end up with a total sale of your GBTC position. Okay. So we once again have massive profit-taking by certain players which are directly linked to what is happening at the ETF level. So we are once again taking a little step back from what could happen, and we prepare ourselves to be right and to be wrong. If you are in the validation of a long, at the level of the validation of ETFs, prepare yourself to have a sell the news so that even if you are wrong, you are prepared, and vice versa. If you are more like me and buy the rumor, sell the news, prepare yourself if we ever have a massive injection of liquidity and we have a long side that goes very, very strong. We have to be prepared for both eventualities because in all cases, the timing is getting tighter, and it's just a matter, I think, of days, really. Even, come on, we'll say weeks. But I think that we are more in a notion of days than in a notion of weeks. And I think that, in fact, 2024 will actually start with a bang, whether downward or upward. In any case, we will have a return of volatility, and that is what we are really looking for in cryptos. I hope you like this video. If so, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment. It always makes me very happy, and above all, it supports the channel and it allows us to end on a very nice daily for 2023. Don't hesitate to share it. Know that tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, I have some really special videos in store for you that you won't have to miss. I can assure you that it will be really, really very interesting. And in the meantime, we'll meet at 13:30 for a little analysis on Injective. It's been a long time since I've done one. I come back to this UFO from 2023, and that's from 13:30.